2018. As you all know, we came through here a lot. I remember meeting some of you in the Red Bud Cafe in Blanco before we went on to the town hall in Bernie. Some of you may have been there as well. Had a great time, met some wonderful people, learned a lot about this land and the history that is here. And as always, so many good folks coming out to meet us and to be with us and to support us and to make sure that we reached out to our fellow Texans, Republicans, Democrats, independents alike. All of us, before we're anything else, we're human beings, we're Americans, we're gonna be good and kind to one another. You all exemplify that. I love it. At such a divided moment, we're gonna find a way to bring each other together, do the big things. And then to be introduced by Alejandro Escovedo, one of my all-time heroes, whose music I grew up on and I just love, and lives this ethic of the traveling itinerant musician, spreading the word and bringing joy to every community he comes to. I was listening to an interview with him, and he was talking about some of his early days touring in the 1970s, and he said he was kind of bringing together the music of George Jones and The Clash, which is my favorite band of all time. And Alejandro, not unlike a punk rock band from the 70s, we're piled into this Chrysler minivan and we're going town to town. We were in Valentine yesterday. Before that, we were in Nacogdoches, Texas. And yeah, we have one person who knows who Nacogdoches, Texas is. I love it. But we're going everywhere, listening to and talking with everyone, because it's going to take all of us doing everything that we can with what we have, where we are, to get this state on the right track. And we're not talking about doing crazy, extreme, shoot for the moon kind of stuff. I'm just talking about getting back to the basics, treating each other with compassion and kindness, focusing on the kinds of jobs that we want our kids and grandkids to be able to work, getting behind our world-class public school educators so we have a world-class system of public education. Doing some common sense stuff like expanding Medicaid so that more people can see a doctor, fill a prescription, go to a mental health care provider in a state where the largest provider of mental health care services today is the county jail system. The largest inpatient facility is the Harris County Jail in downtown Houston, Texas. We're the 9th largest economy on the face of the planet, in the wealthiest, most medically advanced country the world has ever known. And this is how we're treating the most vulnerable among us. We rank 50th, dead last, in access to be able to see a mental health care provider. I cannot tell you how many times at meetings just like these, I meet somebody and they say, you know, Beto, my mom or my little brother or another family member, they get arrested on purpose to be taken to jail because they're schizophrenia, they're bipolar disorder, they're clinical depression, they're uninsured, it's untreated, and that's the one place that they can count on to get some care in their community. That's nuts. Imagine the outcomes for that person. Imagine the cost to all of us to house them in jail instead of just paying cents on the dollar to extend health care by expanding Medicaid, to make sure that they can see that provider, be healthy enough, well enough to write amazing music, to create jobs, to go to school, to raise their family, to do whatever they were placed on this planet to do in the first place. Now, that's not radical, that's not extreme, that's not Democrats, that's not Republicans. Those are Texas values, being good to one another, making the most of what we have, and making sure that everyone does well, because when everyone does well, everyone does well, right? I'm a big believer in that. I couldn't help but notice the sign as I was coming in to Johnson City, and it, of course, boasts about President Johnson growing up here, which is so exciting, and it makes me think about his life as an example and an inspiration to all of us. So in 1928, he leaves Texas Southwest Teachers College in San Marcos, Texas, and he goes down to Cotulla. And he goes down to Cotulla to teach at the Mexican school. That's a school that taught Mexican-American kids, but in 1928, if you were Mexican-American, you were Mexican. And there was one school that you could go to, the Wellhausen School, where they trained you to be a field hand or to work on a farm or a factory, because as a Mexican kid, there was nothing else, no other prospect for you in your future. LBJ, all of 20 years old, teaching these kids, soon elevated to be the principal of the school because no one else wanted the job. He thought differently. He told these kids, you are going to be great. You have greatness within you, and I expect it from you. And he held them to that higher standard. And out of his own pocket, He paid for the supplies, the learning materials, the bats and balls for the sports teams to make sure that they could compete against the Anglo kids in that same town, hold their heads high, do better in their lives than anyone else, including maybe their parents, was expecting of them. That memory stayed with him. And for those of you who've heard or read his speech when he convened a joint session of Congress on March 15th, 1965, a week after Bloody Sunday, when John Lewis had tried to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge and was beaten within an inch of his life trying to march for democracy and the right to vote, he anchors that speech both in John Lewis's sacrifice and also that Wellhausen school in Cotulla, Texas. He talks about those Mexican-American kids, and he says they should have every single right, chance, and opportunity that any other child in this nation should have. And by conferring the right to vote on their parents and on any citizen who's eligible to participate in this democracy, we will guarantee that they can do that. Free and fair elections, where every single person can participate and freely choose those that will represent them and serve them and help decide the course and the direction that their country, their state, their community can take. John, who introduced us a little while ago, reminded us that those rights are now being stripped away here in Texas. In this state, it is harder to cast a ballot than in any other in the union, harder to register to vote. This is one of the few where you cannot register online. And with the new election laws signed by Abbott last year, we're seeing ballot rejection rates for mail-in votes of 40 to 50%. Get this, get this. One of those amazing world-class veterans, 95 years old, who put his life on the line for this country, fighting fascism half a world away to protect democracy at home in World War II, he had his mail ballot request rejected as well. How can this be? And I don't know if he's a Republican or a Democrat. No me importa. Does not matter, right? He's an American. He put his life on the line for this democracy. He should be able to vote. So I hope you agree with me that when I'm governor, one of the first things that we do is make sure that we correct voting rights and every eligible person be able to cast their ballot, Republican, Democrat, Independent alike, and freely choose how we move forward as a state. 7 million of our fellow Texans were eligible to vote in 2020 and didn't cast a ballot. Most important presidential election of our lifetimes. They weren't lazy. They didn't love democracy any less than anyone in any other state. It's just that we've drawn this state that way and drawn people out of this democracy. My contention, and so much of the premise of this campaign, many of you may agree with me on the policy and you say, Beto, just get to the point. How in the hell can you win this thing? Those 7 million who've been the very targets of voter suppression and voter intimidation, so often Black Texans, brown Texans, young Texans, Texans with disabilities, the very people targeted by this voter suppression legislation, they are the margin of victory in this campaign. If we get out there, knock on their doors, pick up the phone and reach out to them, I promise you we can bring them in and we can help them get past, overcome the suppression that's in our way. That's what LBJ did in 1965. The poll tax, the how many jelly beans are in this jar, the recite some part of the Texas Constitution before we allow you to register to vote. It was his courage, his tenacity, his willingness to see the example and the inspiration around him, including from those kids in Cotulla, Texas, that ultimately overcame it. The solution came from Texas. The solution is going to come from Texas right now and this year as well. We wish the Department of Justice would ride into the rescue and determine that what Texas is doing right now violates the Voting Rights Act that was passed in '65, but I don't see them coming our way. We wish the United States Supreme Court would intervene on behalf of the women in Texas and say, you cannot strip away the right to make your own decisions about your own body, your own future, and your own health care. But if we wait for them, we'll be waiting for the rest of our lives. The solutions are within us. The solutions are, in fact, all of us together. As our mutual friend and inspiration, Joe Strummer, would say, the future is unwritten. And without people, you're nothing. So all of us, the people of the state of Texas, have a chance to decide the future, the fate, the fortune of this state. Don't buy or believe any of those polls or prognosticators or pundits out there who are trying to tell us just what is impossible or impossible. When we got together in 2018, we produced the largest voter turnout in the state of Texas since 1970. LBJ was still alive back then. Young voter turnout was up 504% from the previous midterm election. We had world-class public officials and public servants like Aaron Zwiener who were elected in that year because we turned out to vote. That's what we have to do now. If you believe that we should have great jobs, world-class schools, the ability to expand Medicaid, and then maybe just as a bonus item, legalize marijuana in the state of Texas, then we've got to get out and vote and talk to those who can vote and decide the outcome of these elections. Last thing that I want to say, and then we're going to turn the microphone over to you. Cynthia Cano, my colleague, has another microphone, and she'll bring it out to you, and we want to get your voice, your thoughts, your ideas, your suggestions, your questions into the conversation. Back when LBJ was not yet a senator, and certainly not yet president, but a member of the House, I think this was in 1936, he works with the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, on something you all are familiar with because you benefited from it here in Johnson City, the Rural Electrification Administration. Yep. Now, what they decided was we weren't going to give you a handout, we weren't going to fix your problems for you, but we will meet you halfway. If you'll organize as a cooperative here in Johnson City, then the federal government will pay the other half of the cost to lay out the lines to electrify your community. So your kids can read by electric light when they're doing their homework, just like the kids in Dallas or Chicago or London or Tokyo. I met a man in Silverton, Texas, who was in first grade in 1936, and almost through tears, he told me what that meant for his community to be considered important in 1936. It transformed his life, maybe not unlike those kids in Cotulla who first met LBJ in 28 and 29. He now knew that he was supposed to do big things. I want to tell you this to everyone from Johnson City and the surrounding communities. As governor, I'm going to be your partner. Now, whether that means ensuring that we pay teachers what they're really worth. They're underpaid by $7,500 a year right now. We're going to at least get them up to average. Whether that means prioritizing mental health care so you can see that provider or therapist whenever you need to. Whether that means extending broadband internet just like they extended electricity in 1936 so you can get online, to find a job, to finish your education, to find someone to go out with tonight. We've all been there at some time. I want to make sure that you know I'm your partner. And it doesn't matter to me what party affiliation you have, who you pray to, how you love, how many generations you're a Texan, or whether you just got here last week. I want to be a governor for everyone in the state of Texas. This state is big enough for everyone in the state of Texas. And we're going to stop targeting people, pursuing people, fixating on transgender children in the classroom. Instead, we're going to focus on being able to read at fourth grade at a fourth grade level. We're going to make sure that we cancel the STAR test this year so that you don't have any more high stakes, high pressure in your lives. We're going to focus on those things that really bring us together and unite us and are the bridge over these divides and fractures that those in power are currently exacerbating and pitting us against one another over. That's what we can do when we come together. That's what this campaign is about. And if you have not already signed up to be a volunteer, to knock on those doors, to make those phone calls, we would welcome you to do that. We have folks who will sign you up here today. And if you'll hold the clipboard up, we've got at least one volunteer right here, maybe more, maybe another one back there. And then you can always go to betofortexas.com and sign up there as well. So with that, I'm going to ask Cynthia Cano to take this portable microphone to wherever you are standing or sitting and then include you in the conversation. So if there's something you want to get my thoughts on or something you want me to hear your thoughts about, please raise your hand and we'll come out to you. Thank you all for coming out today. Appreciate it.
All right, if you have a question, raise your hand. Here we go.
Thank you. So, after the legalization of marijuana in some of the other states, the government priced out most small agriculture at everybody. Like any small farmer was not able to get either a license or the ability to transport it. How are you going to enable smaller growers and smaller farms and such to be able to use this?
Great question. So we got to make sure that we don't just reinforce the corporate monopoly over so many parts of our lives right now. We saw what happens when we allow that to occur when the temperatures dropped last February. Those corporations who had a monopoly on gas were charging 200 times the going rate. Some utilities couldn't pay it. Some took $2 billion in debt to try to do it. 700 Texans died in the process. It's one of the worst examples of corporate power in the state of Texas. We don't want to repeat the same mistake when it comes to marijuana after it's legalized. Let's support small farmers and ranchers who may be growing it on their land, small producers. And what if we make sure that those who've borne the brunt of the war on drugs, those who've been locked up for possession of a substance that is legal in most of the rest of the country are first in line to be able to make a profit while selling it legally in this country? Especially when we consider who it is that we're locking up right now, right?
Yeah.
This country has the largest prison population on the face of the planet. This state has the largest prison population within this country. And behind those bars in Texas, disproportionately, are black men and brown men. Although all men and women use marijuana at roughly the same rate in Texas, which is a lot. Only some are stopped and frisked and incarcerated. So let's make sure that not only do we legalize it, but that we try to correct some of the injustice that has come before, including expunging those arrest records for those who were locked up. Thanks for asking. Appreciate it.
Right to you, right?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for being here. A bunch of people here fought the Permian Highway pipeline like crazy to try to keep it out of the Texas Hill Country. And I was just wondering how you are going to help Texas get off of fossil fuels and help us transition so we don't get another pipeline through here.
Thanks for asking. Listen, if ever there were a moment for us to focus on it, it is right now. We see the entire continent of Europe being extorted by Russia because they all depend on the natural gas and oil that comes from that country. And they're scrambling right now to find alternative sources of fuel and energy. If we'd made earlier investments in wind, in solar, if we diversified our portfolio of energy resources and then pioneered in hydrogen and geothermal, we wouldn't be dependent on Russia right now in Europe. This country would not have had to fight wars in Kuwait and Iraq and the Middle East, wars that in some form or other are still going on today if we were able to be fully energy independent here in Texas. So look, I'm proud of the fact that these oil and gas workers have secured that independence for this country right now. It's time that we expand on that. We're number one in the country for wind right now. I think that's great. But let's be number one for solar. Let's lead the world on hydrogen and geothermal and battery storage technologies. And by the way, all of the high-paying, high-value, high-skilled jobs that come with that. I want us to maintain our place of pride as the energy leader of the world. But to do that, we're going to have to do exactly what you said, expand beyond oil and gas to include all these renewable energy resources that also allow us to confront climate change before it's too late. Thanks for asking the question. Appreciate that.
Okay, here's our next question.
One Bitcoin transaction expends the same amount of energy as it would do to support a typical household for 47 days. And yet, they don't pay anything different for their electricity. This is starting to overwhelm us. This is a chance to stop it at its early stage. What can we do?
You're right. It's incredibly energy and electricity intensive in a state whose governor already cannot keep the lights on when the temperature drops and when it stays cold for too long. And you know what? It's gonna jeopardize our chance to attract and keep businesses here in the state of Texas. When you add to that the fact that we're outlawing reproductive health care, we're allowing anyone to carry a firearm in public without a background check, we're becoming less competitive for human capital as well as traditional capital in this state. So I do think we need to make sure that those who are using our public utilities are paying the full freight in order to do that. If you want to mine Bitcoin, that's fine. Just make sure that you're paying the true cost of being able to recover it, and that you and I as ratepayers are not footing the bill at the end of the day, because you're right, that's what's happening in the state of Texas right now. Además, we're seeing $45 a month increases on our utility bills, from last year's power grid failure, because those who stole from the Texas ratepayers were able to keep their money, and we had to pay the difference in Texas. So I want to make sure that as governor, there is some justice for those who stole from us, rates come back down, and you can afford to live in your home and use the electricity that powers your lives. Thanks for asking.
Okay, say
Appreciate it.
Mary a little bit more behind.
There are some of our neighbors here right behind us who are really concerned about a position you said about assault rifles. Can you update us on where you are with that now?
Absolutely. As you all know, after the governor of this state, Greg Abbott, was talking about people who came from Mexico and said that we've got to defend ourselves and take matters into our own hands. A guy drove 600 miles from Allen, Texas with an AK-47, walked into the Walmart in El Paso, Texas, and just before he did that, posted a manifesto online and said, I came to repel this invasion that I've been warned about, this invasion of Hispanics who are going to politically take over my state and replace us, meaning Anglos, in the state of Texas. 23 people were murdered in a matter of minutes by a gun that was originally designed and engineered for use on a battlefield. Because that AK-47 and the round that it shoots, high impact, high trajectory, blows away everything inside of your body. It's meant to put you down and keep you down. And that's exactly what it did to the 23 people that it killed. After that happened, I said, I don't think that anyone should have an AK-47 or an AR-15 unless they're on a battlefield, unless they are a soldier. Not everyone's going to agree, and I respect that, right? That's the genius of our democracy, is we can have differences of opinion on an important issue like this one. But here's where I think we can agree. We should at least have universal background checks in the state of Texas, extreme risk protection orders. We should make sure that we have safe storage laws so that young people can't get their hands on guns that their parents are keeping and walk into their grade school or middle school or high school, which happens unfortunately all too often in this state, in this country, and kill their fellow students. Now, that's not a Democratic Party or Republican Party issue. I think that's a basic Texas value. One thing that we can agree on, though, for sure, and I heard this directly from law enforcement, is we don't need this permitless carry bill that allows anyone to carry a loaded gun in public without any kind of background check or training whatsoever. There were 35,000 licenses to carry a firearm that were denied over the last 5 years because law enforcement deemed those people too dangerous to themselves or to others. Now, all 35,000 can and probably are carrying loaded guns in public, and the tens of thousands more who knew better than to ever apply for a license to carry because they could not have passed the background check. We are seeing a spike in gun violence. More cops have been shot down in this state than any other state in the union. Greg Abbott turned his back on law enforcement. We need to listen to them and end permitless carry in the state of Texas and get back to common sense gun laws and defending the Second Amendment. Thanks for asking.
Okay,
Appreciate
we
it.
are right here.
Yes, ma'am.
How you doing? Steve Medina, United States Marine Corps. As a person that signed up during the time of war to defend everybody here and our rights, what are you going to do to protect? You mentioned about, a woman's right to choose, but, I'd like the right to remain as not having, something put in my body that I don't want. Because when I was in the Marines, we all lined up, got God knows what, thrown into our bodies. So I've been subjected to that once. I don't want to go through it again. Also, in regards to firearms, as a Marine, I'm well trained in it. I know the training that I had to undertake to be able to carry my rifle to go into war. And I know, the safety that, we're put through. I agree that anybody who does carry should be subjected to a form of training, but, as far as a, registration or anything, I don't think that should be subjected to us. People say that ARs are weapons of war. A knife, at one time in history, a sword was a weapon of war. In the Bible, it tells us that David slew Goliath with a slingshot. So, what are you going to do to protect my right to carry and my right to remain free of having, being forced to be inoculate?
First of all, Mr. Medina, thank you for your service to our country and the fact that you came out here today to ask these important questions. We're grateful to you for that. I think there's some areas of common agreement on firearms. I think that license to carry program that you just described, which required a background check and training before you're able to carry a loaded gun in public, that makes sense. And actually, it is in keeping with this long, proud tradition of responsible gun ownership in Texas. I grew up with firearms in the household. My Uncle Raymond, who was a sheriff's deputy, he taught me how to shoot, but also the responsibility that comes with owning a gun. I'm okay with folks carrying as long as they've had that training and as long as we've had that background check so that we know that that person's not a danger to any of us. And given the number of gun suicides in this state, make sure that they're not a danger to themselves. I think that's where we were is not a bad place for us to start. On the issue of vaccines, again, I think we may have some common ground here. I don't think there should be a mandate. I don't think everyone should be required to take that. I've been vaccinated, I've been boosted, my 3 kids, my wife have. I believe that it's the right thing to do. But I understand that there are some people who have strongly held beliefs to the contrary. I hope that we can always traffic in the truth, in the science, and the facts, and that those will be compelling enough for people to do what's going to make them safe, and as I think we can all agree, the people around us safe. I didn't just get vaccinated for myself. I wanted to make sure that I protected the people that I might encounter and come into contact with. So I appreciate what you said. I think we got to respect the way that each of us feels.
All right, here's our next question right here.
I'm going to take this next one.
Hello,
Hi there.
David Jugas, out of Austin. We have very low unemployment rate, and yet there are whole industries that can't get enough workers. I'm very curious why we don't have a guest worker program that lucid, and why we're chasing away the people who would fill exactly the jobs that are absent, that are vacant right this moment. Have you got a track on getting the people that are still illegal, that have been here particular a long time, do a kind of triage? 10 years up, you get a citizenship stamp, boom. In other words, just work through the situation so we get as many people citizenized as we can, as quickly as we can. Get the guest worker program where a person gets registered to come into this country. They have ID, they have everything in place. They come to the border, they show the card, they go into their work, they come home. This is not rocket science. It just takes, we got computers, we got people that can think. This could be sorted out fairly quickly. I know there's inertia, there's a lot of resistance to solving this problem, and the proof of it is it's not solved. So that's it. I just want to know what you got to say.
Thank you, David. Yeah, it's interesting. Cynthia and I were traveling Texas last February. So when the freeze hit and the power went out, we piled a bunch of water in the back of our truck and started traveling the state. In fact, first place we came to was Austin, but then we went down to the Rio Grande Valley. And I remember we were in Brownsville in an onion field and watching these workers, all of whom are immigrants from other countries, because no kid born in Brownsville, for the most part, is doing that work. They're bent over backwards, taking these onions out, quickly cutting them, putting them into a box. It's amazing, and it's whole families who are doing this together. And Cynthia and I showed up there, as we did in Austin, to see if people needed water because the pipes were still frozen, if they needed help. These folks were 2 days out of being frozen out of their homes and were in the fields. They crossed into this country undocumented for the privilege of picking the food that all of us take for granted. I don't know how much they're earning because they cannot fight for the $7.25 hour minimum wage. Their employer can say, you know what, sue me in a court of law, you undocumented immigrant. I'd be happy to have that fight with you. The leverage used against them is extraordinary, and yet the value that they provide to all of us is just as extraordinary. Yeah! So how about we do the right thing and acknowledge that immigrants, if they're a problem, they're the best problem we could ever hope to have. Yeah! El Paso, Texas, my hometown, one of the safest cities in America, not in spite of, but because it's a city of immigrants. They make us stronger, safer, and more successful than we would be otherwise. And the gentleman's absolutely correct. It's not rocket science. We could figure out a guest worker program that allows those farm workers, for example, just one example, to come here legally. And then this is pretty important, to return back to their home countries, because just as much as you love Texas, that person might love Saltillo or San Salvador or wherever they come from. They want to get back to their hometown and their families. They just want to be able to earn some money and do some work that no one born here, for the most part, is willing to do. So let's lead on that issue, and I guarantee you Republicans and Democrats alike can get together on that one. Thank you for asking.
Hi, I'm Holly. I'm from Fredericksburg. I'm one of the new Texans that you talked about. I'm wondering, within the first 100 days of your administration, with potentially Republican House and Senate in the state, what are you going to be able to accomplish, and how are you going to go about it?
You know, those three big issues we talked about, jobs, schools, expanding Medicaid, not only are they the most important issues in Texas, it's where you have the most bipartisan agreement to begin with. So let's just take Medicaid, for example. If we'd taken the deal when President Obama had first offered it, it was 100 cents on the dollar. The federal government was going to pay 100% of expansion in Texas. We said no. Now, more than 10 years later, it's 90 cents on the dollar. It's still a pretty good deal. We pay 10 cents for every 90 cents the federal government pays. It's $10 billion a year that would be coming into this state, into communities like these. Fewer people dying of diabetes, which still happens in the state of Texas, the least insured state in the country. And in addition, someone mentioned property taxes earlier when I was coming in. It'll lower your property tax bill. Because right now, when that person who couldn't afford $1,200 a month for their insulin because they're uninsured goes to the hospital when they cannot take it anymore, their care is not going to be sufficient for the damage that's been done to their bodies, but the expense is going to be astronomical. And though they can't pay it, you will through your county hospital taxing district. We accept Medicaid money. Those tax bills come down. People are well enough to be able to go to school, do their jobs. And you know what? Not only does it help big cities, not only is it going to be good for the folks in Austin and El Paso, but rural counties where we've seen 24 hospitals shut down since 2005, where folks are having to drive hundreds of miles to see a provider right now. We're going to be able to stand up those hospitals and clinics again. So the Republicans who represent those communities, I'm going to make the case to them that this is going to do more good for their constituents than almost anyone else. There is enough common ground there to get it done. So imagine doing that, going from the least insured state in the country to being able to cover more than 1 million additional Texans going forward. Let's do that in the first 100 days. Thank you for asking.
Here we go. Next question.
Hello, my name is Flynn Rager, and I live in Johnson City. But I really need to have an answer from you about the wall. I want to know if you're going to build a wall between me and my neighbors, because a while back I was able to pay $50 for a yard being cut on my 5 acres. Now I'm paying over $200 because those people are over across the other side of the country. I feel that they are our neighbors. Why can we not work with them on commerce, trade? Those people wouldn't be coming here. They would never come here if they had jobs over there, if their government was cleaned up from all that drugs and all that junk, if they had lives to be able to live there peacefully. They would not be coming here. And if they did, they would be coming on trade. They would be coming as temporary, like the gentleman back here mentioned, and they wouldn't be staying. We wouldn't have the troubles that we're having with immigration. We wouldn't have to build the wall. They are our neighbors. And think about this right now, Venezuela is getting friendly with Russia. So we need to think about those issues. They are our friends and our neighbors, and we need to work with them.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Listen, you're absolutely right. I mean, when you see these kids who come to this country, 6, 9, 12 years old, sometimes alone, you don't send your little kiddo on a 2,000-mile journey in the hands of a smuggler, on top of, not inside of a train known as La Bestia or the Beast, unless that's the only way to keep them alive. as these gangs run rampant through these Northern Triangle countries in Central America, as we have been involved in their civil wars going back to the 1950s in Guatemala's case, 1970s in Nicaragua and El Salvador, we consume the illegal drugs that are produced and transited through these countries. It's literally hollowing out rule of law in the institutions that we take for granted here. And then climate change, it's hitting that part of the world harder than anywhere else. And we're generating more of that change here from our excesses and our emissions and our inability to do the right thing while we still have time to do the right thing. They are bearing the brunt of it. That misery that we are complicit in is not going to be kept at bay with a wall or with 10,000 members of the National Guard that have been posted on the border. It's not going to be met by cruelty or family separation or kids in cages. The only thing that's going to address it, to your point, is resolving the underlying issues there in those countries. So again, let Texas help lead on that and tell that story. And no, we don't need any more walls. We don't need any more cruelty. We just need some common sense and some kindness going forward, directed in the right places. So thank you for asking the question. Appreciate it. Yes.
Yes, in the past week, the TCEQ, which for those who don't know is the state board that issues permits for the discharge of wastewater into our creeks and streams, floated a permit for comment that said there would be no wastewater discharge allowed, and then they said in only these specific stretches of river and in these specific locations. The Pedernales River was not on that list, and none of the creeks that flow into it were on that list. And that river starts down there on the other side of Harper. It comes all the way through Gillespie County. And by the way, there's a state park, a national park, and another state park over here who benefit from it. Not only that, we have a lot of economies here that depend upon it. And then it goes down and feeds into Lake Travis, and yet they are still dumping wastewater into our river and our creeks, and there is no relief. And we are growing by leaps and bounds. Our development is just out of sight, and it's getting worse and worse. And if you don't believe me, you can go to almost any crossing upriver and look at the algae bloom. It's there.
Thank you for bringing that up. And look, we were talking about corporate power in the state of Texas. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is practically controlled by the corporations that it's supposed to oversee and regulate. And when you have oversight captured by industry and corporations, then they're not protecting us. There are more poisoned water systems in the state of Texas than in any other state in the union. If we want to be able to count on what comes out of the tap, or breathe the air, or depend on what we grow in the soil, we're going to need to make sure that we have the appropriate regulations and that they're actually enforced. No more conflicts of interest, no more revolving door, and we want real accountability. We also want that to come from you. These open comment periods, we expect you to give your comment and to lend your voice. We've got to listen when you do it. And I promise you, I mentioned earlier about being your partner. I promise you, when I'm governor, we will do that. This is the heritage that we took from those who preceded us. We'll pass on to those who follow us. They're counting on us at this moment, the people of the future, and we cannot let them down. So you've got my commitment on that, and I appreciate you being here and raising that. Thank you.
All right, back here.
Yes, Ms. Cano.
Hi, Beto. My name's Kate, and we live in far north San Antonio. Clearly, we are all living with a wall of misinformation everywhere. It's surrounding us here. Frankly, I don't know if in our neighborhood we're going to have to get some courage to even put a yard sign in our yard. Yeah. When we're talking with our neighbors, if we're out campaigning on your behalf, how would you have us respond to this misinformation? Because, you know, quite frankly, you talk about kindness and being respectful, and I think all of us want that. All of us want that kind of world, but you see where I'm going with this?
I do. I so appreciate you asking that question and even offering to volunteer to go knock on some doors, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to win this. It won't happen on TV. It's not going to happen on social media. We won't be able to devise the mailer that someone's going to read and blows their mind and now they're going to vote for me. It's going to be you showing up and they see another human being, their neighbor, who's taken the time and from their own heart and in their own words describing why this election is so important. That, by the way, is the best answer to your question, to just in your own words describe why you're there. That's going to be so compelling, and they're going to trust you far more than they will trust me. You know them, or you live an experience very similar to them in that same community. But if someone asked you, hey, I know that you went and saw Beto on Saturday, what was this guy talking about? Was he trying to turn Texas into a socialist state like Venezuela? Did he want to take away your handguns and hunting rifles and shotguns? Did he want to end all oil and gas forever in the state of Texas and take away all those jobs? Say, you know what, I heard this guy, and out of his own mouth, he talked about making sure that the best jobs in the world are created right here in Texas. And he said that oil and gas jobs are going to be part of it, but we're going to expand that to add wind and solar and other renewable energies. He talked about world-class public schools and paying our teachers a fair wage. He talked about expanding Medicaid. And then, as always, know your audience, and if it's the right person, say he also wants to legalize weed. And if none of those get them, get them with something else that is near and dear to your heart. But make sure that they understand that we're trying to bring people together at a moment that the governor's trying to further divide us. And those issues, it's hard to find someone who's going to fight you on great jobs, world-class schools, and the ability to see a doctor. So that's my advice. Stick to those. Listen as much as we talk, right? Sometimes we knock on someone's door and we just want to give them the sales pitch, and I understand that, and sometimes I'm guilty of the same. But just like we're doing today, maybe ask them, hey, what's on your mind? What's got you going today? And sometimes they're going to talk about the water, and I can't trust what's coming out of the tap. Or I'm worried about them building a wall, or we're not being able to fill the jobs that we're creating here in this community. Just listen. That's wonderful. And I tell you what, there's nothing as powerful or as transformational as a face-to-face, eyeball-to-eyeball, human-to-human connection. And just the fact that you're willing to do that, I guarantee you, is going to bring in the voters that we need. And if all of us do that, we're going to win this election. Thank you for asking.
Over here to your right.
There you are.
Hi, Beto. Hi, I'm a retired Army guy, and I just want to say the people that are in more than 3 years don't need to be thanked for their service. We don't need that. I got two questions for you. One is, when I go to Austin, San Antonio, there's homeless everywhere. Now, you know about 70% of those people are veterans, and I try to explain to people they're homeless by choice, because VA will take care of you. If you're homeless, they'll give you a place to live. They will take care of you. So I think we need to just take them. I know you don't want to grab people off the street, but the same token, letting a person sit out there, I think they're homeless because they have mental problems. And I think that's the problem. And I just wish something could be done about that besides just let them languish on the street, And I guess my second thing is, I guess it's more of a statement than a question, but I was a Republican for a lot of years, and the Bushes and the Reagans got me off of that. I can't even think about what they are now. But I guess my suggestion would be is I'm with you, the kindness but man, they fight dirty. Yeah. I really think that's what we got to do too. I'm sorry.
Kill them with kindness.
Do you want to win?
Kill them with kindness.
You want to be nice. I want to win. And that's what I want to do. So I think you go after them. Let people know how nutty they are. Let people know how nutty their politics are. And their policies are. Yeah. And that's what I try to do every person I meet.
Great point. Listen, on this first issue of especially veterans who are homeless, let's make sure that the Texas Veterans Commission and the VA, as you just suggested, is really doing all that they can for every veteran. I've met too many who talk about being denied until they die. It's a phrase you hear commonly among veterans. They're trying to get that disability rating, just like Mr. Brown jumping out of airplanes. Sometimes your knees are shot, sometimes you come back with PTSD or traumatic brain injury. And we've got to make sure that we speed up the connection between your disability that you earned in service and then the care that you've earned from that. And sometimes there's just too much of a gap, but I hear you. Let's make sure that we're there for them. On this second issue of prosecuting the case, listen, I did not do a good job of that in 2018. I'd tell you, if we were gathered 4 years ago, look, you've already formed your own opinion of Ted Cruz. There's very little I can add to that, right? And then we'd move on. But we left a lot of votes on the table. We didn't explain to folks when they lived in a community whose rural hospital had closed down that this guy in the Senate did not fight for you. He closed down the government. He denied veterans their ability to get care from the VA because he wouldn't allow the federal government to stay open. I needed to prosecute the case. And I think we left a lot of votes out there that otherwise would have come our way. And we only lost by 2.5%. So in this campaign, we're taking your advice. I'm going to make sure that every Texan knows that the $45 extra that they are paying in utility bills every month for the next 20 years is because Greg Abbott sided with the corporations who stole from us, and we're all paying the Abbott tax going forward. The reason that we're in the midst of a maternal mortality crisis is that he's not only outlawed abortion, but by closing down reproductive health care clinics, it is that much harder to get a cervical cancer screening, reproductive health care, or to see a doctor at all. And we're losing women, especially women of color, faster here than we are in any other state. Greg Abbott is responsible for so many of the things that are going so wrong in the state of Texas right now. We will connect the dots, prosecute the case, keep that guy on the back foot and against the ropes every day for the next 8.5 months. Thank you for saying that. We appreciate it. Gracias.
All right, same spot. Thank you to everybody for all the wonderful questions, the great discussions. We're going to give Rep. Zwiener the last comment.
There you go, Cynthia.
Yeah, thank you so much, first of all, Beto, for coming out to House District 45 once again. Well, it will now be House District 19, but I'm going to claim it until January, Pam. Even if I don't get to be on the ballot anymore. I want to address everybody in this crowd who is wondering, what can I do? Especially everyone here who was going, all my neighbors are Republicans, I can't do anything. I'm talking to you most of all. First of all, there are always more Democrats in your community than you think there are. And many of them are going to need you to remind them to get out to vote. The other thing is, you are the absolute best person to talk to your neighbors who are, shall we say, Beto curious. You can talk to them about the burnout they're seeing among their teachers at school and why that's Governor Abbott's fault. You can talk to them about the blackout and how Governor Abbott is still putting private profits over us on the ground. You can talk to them about how they're seeing healthcare access erode in these rural communities. So I need y'all to sign up today to be those people talking to your neighbors about why we need Beto in the governor's mansion. The other piece I want to say is every single community in Texas has people who are struggling to access their right to vote. Less than a mile from here, I knocked on a door in 2018 where I talked to a woman who had mobility challenges, who had never registered to vote because she didn't think she could vote by mail, and she didn't think she could safely get herself to the polls. So I was able to get her registered to vote, teach her about the ballot by mail process. That was right here within the city limits of Johnson City. Wherever you live in Texas, there are people who need your help to vote, and they need it all the more after the passage of Senate Bill 1. So please, please, please find the people with the clipboards today. Sign up to volunteer. Sign up to give the Democrats in the Texas legislature some backup in the governor's mansion. We need Beto.
Thank you, Aaron. And you know what? As we close, I began, and so did John, on the issue of democracy and the fact that it was the Texas president, LBJ, who signed the 65 VRA into law. Well, it was Aaron and her colleagues who were willing to walk out of the legislative session and go to Washington, D.C. to deny the quorum to the Republicans who are trying to destroy this democracy here in the state of Texas. We are so grateful to you. and your leadership and your example. We need more of it. Folks, we're going to stick around for a little while. I'm going to be right here for anyone who wants to take a picture or say hello and post that on social media. In the year 2022, it is the only way to prove that we exist is to be online, and it helps to get the word out to everyone else. And then Cynthia, I want to make sure that I have a chance to say hello to Alejandro Escobedo and maybe get a picture with him before he leaves, okay? Thank you all for coming out today. Thank you, John. Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, team.
Yep. Thank you for it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we don't want you going back there. Alejandro, I want one with him too, though. There you go. Be careful with the leg, mama. There you go. Dude, look at Alejandro. Oh no. Oh, you got it up with his elbow. Can't sleep. Way back to your car backing out already.
Some things you born to, some things you gotta learn.
I gave her mine.
Mama said they're hiring, no need to graduate. Maybe your dad got that call, 1988. I always thought I'd get away, I thought I could rise above. I don't remember anymore. Some things you're born to, some things you build.
Bob goes to church every Sunday that the fish ain't biting. Bob never has to have dinner with the preacher cause Bob never bothered getting married. He likes to drink a beer or two every now and again. He always had more dogs than he ever had friends. Bob ain't light in the loafers. He might kneel, but he never bends over. Bob takes care of his mama. She's the only one who lets call him Robert. She don't drive anymore, so he takes her to the store and gets her yard looking just like she wants. Every week at the beauty shop, Bob's mama hears of another woman's made another man disappear. Robert ain't exactly scared of women. He's just got his own way of living. Bob still got an antenna on a pole, 2 channels coming, 2 more coming through. He used to watch the news, but he don't anymore. Ain't none of it new, it's the same as before. He figures already of it's any good force, keeping everybody bored till there ain't nobody like Bob anymore. Bob takes care of his mama. She's a mess, but he feels like he oughta. I beg a mess today, ask Bob, he'll say she's a big one and she's gonna be a lot. He likes to drink a beer or two every now and again. He always had more dogs than he ever had friends. Bob ain't light in the loafers. He might kneel, but he never bends over.
She's talking. Is that okay? All right. You can say hi.
All my daydreams, disasters. She's the one I think I love. River's burn, men run backwards.
Halloween and 28 little boys dressed up like Beto.
Mr. Browning has a prediction. We've all been told. So come on back, New York City. Roll your trucks in at dawn. Walk with me to the fountain and hold on to my arm.
Woo! 25 kids went off of there.
What you
I think it's
do,
what do we get? I don't know what happened.
Roman and Madrid. Shake my baby and please bring it back.
Oh, you are. We missed the longest.
Step won't even be still. Karen's over the landfill. Buries us all in its broken back.
I'm so glad to have you.
We try. Yeah. We do. I don't have any. Yes. Early. And that sensory stuff.
The most tender place in my heart is for strangers. Love some kind, but my own blood is much too dangerous. Hanging round the ceiling half the time. Hanging round the ceiling half the time. From then some I've been around, but I really tried so hard. Like no course, not new days. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. And I was a mean girl, but somebody's in between them. I stand alone. This is funny, it's real love. And it just feels too long.
Y'all three of us in there? You want by yourself with them too? Okay, cool. Yeah.
Now and then it keeps you running, never seems to die. Trails spin with fear, not enough, living on the outside. Never seem to get far enough, staying in between the lines. Hold on to what you can, waiting for the end, not knowing when. May the wind take your troubles away. May
troubles away. Both feet on the floor, two hands on the wheel. May the wind take your troubles away. Trying to make it far enough to the next time zone. Few and far between past the midnight hour. You never feel alone, you're really not alone. Switching it over to AM, searching for a truer sound. Can't recall the call letters, steel guitar and settle down. Catching an all-night station somewhere in Louisiana. It sounds like 1963, but for now it sounds like heaven. May the wind take your troubles away. May the wind take your troubles away. Both feet on the floor, two hands on the wheel. May the wind take your troubles away. May the wind take your troubles away. May the wind take your troubles away.
And at 20 years old, she was rich as could be, and a world-famed Hollywood star. With the brute parts coming and the sweethearts too, was a hell of a ride. But her star soon fell and her body got on, so she took a lot of pills and died. Well, she took a lot of pills and died. Took a lot of pills and died. The star soon fell.
Just meet.
Okay,
I have
okay.
no picture. I'm just gonna meet.
Okay, great.
Thank you kindly thinking of me. I'm not smiling, I'm just thinking. Glad and sorry, happy or sad. All is done and spoken. You're up or I'm down.
I just wanted to say hello.
Can you show me a dream? Can you show me one that's better than life? Can you stand it in the me one that's better than life. Can you stand it in the cold light of day? When neither can I.
Which phone do y'all want to use?
Miles of empty skies and never winding streets, so incomplete and long. When I close my eyes, I always see your face, I hear your voice, I'm almost home. I've always been an in and out sort of fella, and my mind gets to roaming, I guess. But when I'm far away, I can still see that day and you in that little white dress. Remember that flat tire out on Route 41? We had to thaw right in the rain. And when we went swimming naked in your old man's pond, drunk and singing Sweet Jane. Miles of empty skies and winding streets, so incomplete and alone. When I close my eyes, I always see your face, I hear your voice, I'm almost home. Those long bus station nights, always checking flights, wrapped up in my sleeping bag beneath the city lights. Another rest stop, another toll, another time zone, another bowl. Miles of empty skies and never winding streets, so incomplete and alone. When I close my eyes, I always see your face, I hear your voice, I'm almost home. Across the water, longing to be warm. You're my shelter from danger, my anchor in the storm. But it's hard to set down some roots when you always got mud on your boots. When you always got mud on your boots. Miles of empty skies and never winding streets, so incomplete and alone. When I close my eyes, I always see your face, I hear your voice, I'm almost home. I hear your voice, I'm almost home. I hear your voice, I'm almost home.
Yes, yes. That's so great. Oh, thank you. No, this is like whether I mean, I was nervous.
Please don't ask me to swim that river. Please don't ask me for silver and gold. I can't give you the thing that I can't deliver, but I'll keep you warm when the nights are cold. The moon is high, the stars are blinking, clouds are drifting so slow and low, and I just can't keep myself from thinking I'll keep you warm when the nights are cold. Are drifting so slow and low, and the fire is dying, the logs are falling, but I'll keep you warm when the nights are cold. Please don't ask me to swim in that river. Please don't ask me for silver and gold. I can't give you things that I can't deliver, but I'll keep you warm when the nights are cold. I'll keep you warm when the nights are cold. I saw you laying on the memory with your back turned to the crowd, and that little bar on Murphy where they play guitar too loud. There were people drinking whiskey, their hearts about to leave. It was cold as hell for Houston, it was almost New Year's Eve. All the way from Beaumont with a white rose in my hand, I could not wait forever, babe, I hope you understand. All the night was feeling lucky, so I asked you to dance, and the way you looked up at me made me think I had a chance. But I put my arms around you, I knew you weren't giving in. I hope it will be different if I pass this way again. All the way from Beaumont with a white rose in my hand, I could not wait forever, babe, I hope you understand. I walked the road to get here with a guitar and a case. I'd have stopped in Pasadena if I'd known about this place. But you looked like forever where the water meets the shore. I've been thinking about you, baby, I can't do that anymore. I saw you leaning on a memory with your back turned to the crowd, in that little bar on Murphy where they play guitar too loud. There were people drinking whiskey, there were hearts about to leave. It was cold as hell for Houston, it was almost New Year's Eve. All the way love
She's good, so you got two brothers.
Yeah, she's happy. See her smile and say goodbye. Stay so
Come on.
I definitely don't do political.
No, it's all right. I get it.